All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're looking at a really interesting comparison, I think.
Mm,
This is one that a lot of our listeners, I think, are probably going to be interested in.
for sure.
Two very similar SUVs from the same parent company, General Motors,
Yep.
but kind of some interesting key differences that might sway you one way or another.
Yeah. I think this is a great example of how even within the same company, you can get two vehicles that on paper seem very similar.
Right.
But when you really start to dig into the details, they appeal to some pretty different buyers.
Yeah, so we are talking about the 2025 Buick Enclave
Okay.
and the 2025 Chevrolet Traverse.
So like you said, both three-row SUVs, perfect for families, road trips, all that good stuff.
Yep.
But one is definitely leaning more towards the luxury side, and the other is more about practicality and value.
Yeah, so why don't we start there with price?
Okay.
I mean, for a lot of people, that's probably going to be the first thing that they're considering.
Absolutely.
So the Enclave, it starts at $46,395,
Okay.
whereas the Traverse is a little bit more affordable at $41,995.
That's a pretty significant difference right there.
Yeah, like almost $5,000.
Yeah. And that's just the starting price, too.
Right.
If you start loading these things up with all the bells and whistles, you can get an Enclave close to like $70,000.
Wow.
And a Traverse, even fully loaded, will probably stay under 61.
So that begs the question, is that added luxury in the Enclave actually worth that extra cost?
It's a good question, and it really depends on your priorities.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit more so in terms of the performance. What are we looking at for both of these?
Well, interestingly enough, both of these SUVs use the exact same engine.
Really?
Yeah.
So even though one is, leaning more towards luxury and the other is more practical, they actually have the same...
The same heart under the hood.
Okay, so what engine are we talking about here?
It's a 2.5-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine,
Okay.
and it's paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission in both.
So theoretically, they should have very similar acceleration and just overall driving experience.
Yeah, for the most part, you're going to get very similar performance out of both vehicles.
Okay.
Now, I will say some reviewers have noted that the Traverse actually handles a little bit better.
What is that?
Well, it seems like Chevy has tuned the Traverse suspension a little bit more on the sporty side.
Okay.
So it has a slightly tighter steering ratio. It feels a little bit more agile, particularly when you're driving on like winding roads.
Gotcha.
Whereas the Enclave, it's really prioritizing that smooth, comfortable ride. So it's not quite as engaging for the driver.
Okay, but if you're somebody who's looking for a comfortable ride, maybe that's not a bad thing.
Exactly. It's all about what you prioritize.
Right. So similar performance, but maybe a slight edge to the Traverse in terms of the handling for people who are looking for that.
Yeah. Now, what about fuel economy? I know that's always a big consideration for SUV buyers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So what are we looking at there?
Well, this is where it gets kind of interesting. The Enclave actually gets slightly better gas mileage in the city.
Oh, okay.
It gets an estimated 21 miles per gallon,
Okay.
whereas the Traverse gets 19 in the city.
Okay.
But on the highway, the Traverse actually edges out the Enclave a little bit.
So the Traverse is more fuel efficient on the highway.
It gets 27 miles per gallon on the highway, and the Enclave gets 28, so just a slight difference.
Okay, so really it comes down to like where you're going to be doing most of your driving.
Exactly.
If you're mostly a city driver, the Enclave might be a better choice. But if you're doing a lot of highway driving,
Maybe think about the Traverse.
okay, that makes sense.
I
All right, let's move on to the interior and cargo space.
All right.
Because both of these are three-row SUVs.
Mm,
They're meant to be spacious to fit a lot of people and a lot of stuff.
for sure.
What are we looking at here?
You would think that the more luxurious Enclave would have more space, right?
Right.
But surprisingly, they both offer almost identical cargo space.
Really?
Yeah, up to 97.5 cubic feet with the second row folded down.
Wow, that's a lot of space.
That's a ton of space.
Yeah, you could fit like a whole family's worth of camping gear in there.
Oh, yeah, easily. Or even like a small kayak.
Yeah. And in terms of the passenger space,
Yeah.
how does that break down?
Well, they both have really comfortable legroom in both the front and second rows.
Yeah.
You're looking at about 44.29 inches in the front for both,
Okay.
and then 41.46 inches in the second row.
Okay, so really similar there too.
Yeah. I think when it comes to space, they're pretty much neck and neck.
So it really comes down to the features and the kind of layout of that space.
Yeah, I mean, the Enclave is obviously going to have more luxurious materials,
Right.
maybe a little bit more of a refined design.
Like higher quality leather and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
The Traverse might have a few more like clever storage solutions.
Okay.
Things like underfloor compartments in the cargo area.
Gotcha. So maybe a little bit more practical in that way.
Yeah, a little more utilitarian.
Okay. So speaking of features, let's move on to the tech.
Yeah.
Because I know that's something that a lot of people are interested in nowadays, especially in new cars.
Oh, absolutely.
They want all the latest and greatest gadgets and gizmos.
All the bells and whistles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at for each of these SUVs?
Well, you mentioned the Enclave's Bose audio system.
Yeah, that's like a 16-speaker system, right?
Yeah, it's a fantastic system. It comes standard on the Enclave.
Wow.
So if you're an audiophile, that's definitely a big selling point.
All right.
The Traverse, its standard system isn't quite as impressive.
Okay.
But where it really shines is in the tech department, is it offers Super Cruise,
Oh, wow.
which is GM's hands-free driving system.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal right now.
It's a game changer, especially if you do a lot of highway driving.
Yeah. So you can actually take your hands off the wheel on certain highways.
Exactly. It uses cameras, radar, GPS, all that stuff to keep you in your lane, maintain a safe distance from other cars.
So it's actually like a level 2 semi-autonomous driving system.
Pretty much.
That's pretty amazing. And is that available on all the Traverse trims?
It's not standard on all of them,
Okay.
but it is an option on some of the higher trims.
Gotcha. And then what about the Enclave? Is Super Cruise available at all in the Enclave?
It is. It's an optional feature.
Okay, so not standard.
Not standard.
But if you really wanted it, you could get it.
You could get it, yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, it seems like both of these SUVs have a lot to offer.
They really do.
It's really just a matter of figuring out what's most important to you.
Exactly. What are your priorities?
Yeah, if you want that luxury experience, if you're willing to pay a little bit extra.
The Enclave is a great choice.
Yeah, but if you're looking for something practical, maybe a little bit more value for your money.
The Traverse is right there.
Yeah, and especially if you do a lot of highway driving.
That Super Cruise is a game changer.
It really is.
Oh,
But I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
I think so.
Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I would just say, we've given you a lot to think about, but the best way to really decide between these two is to go and test drive them.
Absolutely.
Get behind the wheel, see how they feel, experience them for yourself.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't really know until you actually get in the car.
Exactly. And here's one last thing to consider.
Okay.
Resale value.
Oh, yeah, that's always important.
Historically, Buicks tend to hold their value a little bit better than Chevrolets.
Interesting.
So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today.
Great talking about these.
Yeah, this was fun. And we'll be back next week with another deep dive.
See you then.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Bye.